So I want to turn back around now and let's get into our roundtable. We got about 20 people here today, and there have been a lot of questions that have been sent in. And if you have a question or something that you'd like us to talk about in this group, and I see on our list here, I see directors of product management, I see product marketing leaders, I see a lot of folks who have been both executing on product management and consulting and training companies in product management for over a decade. We've got a lot of expertise in this room, so it's a great day to bring your questions to the audience. If you've got something that you would like to bring to the front, just raise your virtual hand by using the interactions panel at the bottom of your screen. If you want to jump in and respond to somebody's question, raise your hand, or if you need to, just jump right in. That's okay too. I do want to welcome Ryan Geringer, who's joining us for the first time ever as well, from Cox Automotive. Thanks for joining us, Ryan. And if I don't see any hands up there already, I want to kind of talk about, I want to lead into the discussion today and look, do we have, we had a question come in the other day from one of our Product Coffee regulars asking about launching new features, but the focus was really on, one of the things as product managers that we all regularly have to think about is how we're going to bring new features to market. This was a little bit different situation about bringing features to market that are drastically different from the types of things you normally bring to market. Maybe you're pivoting, maybe you're launching a new product line, you're doing something that's a little bit outside of the norm. So how do you bring new capabilities to market that are fundamentally different from your normal offerings, get success, and then how have people gone about collecting feedback on how that launch is going when there's a new concept that your customers are starting to pay attention to for the first time from your company? Has anyone had any experience around that or have any thoughts on how they might like to approach that type of a challenge? Brian, I'm gonna tap your shoulder. I know that Brian Huss, welcome. Brian is from FanDuel, and I know FanDuel has been growing like crazy over the last few years, really exploding, and started out with a core product line, but has been branching out quite a bit as well. Why don't you talk about some of the new things that FanDuel has brought to the market and launched over the last couple of years that were kind of new to the company?
Sure.
Sorry to put you on the spot, but I know you got them.
No, it's all good. We got a few more things coming that I can't quite talk about yet. But
That's okay.
in terms of like what's actually happened very recently, so yeah, as you said, we had the core daily fantasy product that been out for quite a long time, and then as the legal picture changed and we were able to get sports betting and casino up in more states, our focus has been, how do you roll out, these new products in ways that serve both the people who already, who were eagerly awaiting them coming and already understood what they were about to do. I mean, anybody who was like betting offshore, betting with a bookie, like when FanDuel and others were regulated, they said, great, now I get to do this, kind of above board. I think our challenge has been, how do you within the same product serve both that user as well as the user who is starting to hear about this kind of thing as part of sports coverage and sports media, but doesn't necessarily understand the concepts. So finding that balance between creating a product that is kind of introducing a new segment versus something that serves power user. I think that's been one of our things. And so how we've handled that has been coming out with new types of variations on the core. Like one example is we have something called same game parlay, which basically means you can bet on a variety of things happening inside the same game. You can bet on, Trae Young over 23 points, John Collins over 11 rebounds. You can bet in all those things together. You don't have to happen. And the premise being, we think that the more I won't even say casual, but people who are new to this idea, they might be more focused on their own team or their own game they're going to. So we've been thinking about like, who are these market segments and how do we create new features and functionality that really serve them?
And so I think that's right in line actually with the question itself, because you've taken uh, you've got two types of customers: some that have been doing a thing already, but now they're doing it in a whole different context, and
Yeah.
so that creates a new interaction pattern as well. And they started off with FanDuel specifically for a function. I'm in the fantasy sports game, and that's what I want to do. And all of a sudden, you can now do something that they may very well be doing through another provider already, but they were doing it offshore. Um,
Mhm.
and then now but then also you're introducing a whole group of new people to the concept. So, um, has anything worked particularly well for you in terms of introducing your existing customer base to these new capabilities?
We've been very focused on education, on using things like we do a lot of work with Braze in terms of in-app messaging and things like that, trying to offer information about what's available. That's been big for us as well as I think just trying to make the user journeys to do all these things as easy as possible. Because we do have all these different product lines now, and but like we want to take advantage of that. Like that scale is a good thing, and so we need to make sure that getting people from sportsbook to casino to horse racing to fantasy, like it's really easy. It doesn't look like it was built by four different teams, even though it was, and making those journeys hang together, so that when we say you're in sportsbook, here's a casino opportunity for you. Maybe we'll tie that into a promotion of some kind, but just to make that really smooth and really obvious has been our most important focus.
Do you mind sharing how you're collecting feedback as you launch new products? I'm sure you're using some traditional techniques, but tell us a little bit about how you collect feedback on that.
Sure. So, we've got we've got a variety of methods in the application by which we do that. We work with Apptentive to offer a lot of in-app surveys and things tied to certain actions the user has taken. Then we do a lot of with our email list, we'll follow up offline and say, hey, we can you give us some feedback on this new feature? And then we do a lot of more qualitative work as well. We've gotten onboarded onto the user testing platform. So we've now got that's made it a lot easier for us to recruit different segments of users and get them in either for moderated interviews and feedback focus groups, or more unmoderated, take them through a task and see what their reaction, get them talking through their thought process while they do it.
Very good. Thank you. I appreciate you kind of sharing that. Sorry to jump on you like that.
No, all good.
So, Matt, you look like you're wanting to jump in here.
Yeah, I was going to say, just kind of staying in the world of gambling, actually. I was over digital lottery products for a long time prior to my previous role. And we had kind of a similar experience where we were taking, a traditional lottery product, which is still sold in the store, and then just now selling it over your phone or computer or whatnot. It's a similar type of experience to him, I'm sorry, I forgot the last guy's name. But one of the things we had to really focus on in terms of measurement, which I was just going to add to the conversation, is it's really important to see how it affects, at least for us, how does that affect your current business, right? So if you're taking something brand new, are you cannibalizing the existing business? Are you adding to it? So we just had and it was really important for us for kind of political reasons within our retailers. Like if we're introducing digital products into a market, are we dropping retail sales? Are we adding to retail sales? So we had a huge focus on just what happens when we go into a market. What do the sales look like? What does the ROI look like? Just so, I agree with everything else you said. Just add the, pay attention to the existing market as well.
So you're paying attention to the existing market is a really key perspective there. And were you simply measuring and observing the results, or were there targets or limits that you were actively trying to avoid? Make sure we don't do this, or make sure we do accomplish something else.
Yeah, initially it was just, okay, what happens, right? We had set some internal goals, but the honest truth is nobody really knew, right? It was, this was like circa 2012 when, there weren't digital lottery products, so we didn't have anything to go off of. So initially it was just, okay, let's get some data to go off of. And then at that point, we quickly realized, this actually helps retail sales. Interestingly enough, we thought it was going to cannibalize them and actually drop retail sales down, right? You'd think, if your average person in the state spends, $50 a month on a lottery ticket, we kind of, at least I kind of assumed it would just transfer over to digital. But what we actually saw was, this increased sort of push and advertisement and ability to get it into the customer's hands actually drove increased sales. It did not cannibalize in any way, shape, or form. So from that point, we just sort of used those metrics to be able to sort of calm some fears from our customers and some of their constituents. So after we realized there was not going to be cannibalism, we didn't end up having to track it quite as much at that point once we had proof. But I think to your point, if we would have realized that, hey, we're dropping our retail sales by 10% or something like that, I think at that point we probably would have had to have tried to set some guardrails for how much we do that. It didn't end up being a problem for us.
Yeah, cool, very good. Mr. Guttrell, you've got your hand raised there. Why don't you jump on in here?
Yeah, I mean, I love the original question. Where we have a core product and we're launching new capabilities that extend to something different, right? Now the question is, what is the different thing, right? Is it taking your core capabilities and extending it, like in a B2B scenario, to additional users in the companies and organizations you already work with? Because that's a different level of risk, a different level of tactics you would use. Or are you using a common platform like a SaaS environment where you got security and access controls and going after a whole new segment? Both of those would have different approaches. And I think lots of folks are like, well, we got a support team, we got an implementation team, and this is just talking to people about problems and putting them on our platform. And the challenge with that is they have different customer experience expectations, right? Different onboarding capabilities. And so when I've done this, whether it's taken a current product to a new market, like an international market or vertical, I tried to look at what's changed, right? Are we talking to different people, buyers? Are we working with different tech savvy roles in the users in an organization? I'm mainly B2B in my experience. And are we changing the pricing? Are we changing how we reach the market? And one of the challenges I think other organizations just assume and guess, we got a marketing team. This will just be another program they do, but it might require different skills, different focus, different channel. So I often ask, or when I've done this, I've looked at, so if it's changing buyers, users, pricing, and packaging, we might need a whole different team to make this successful. We can't just put more things in sales bags to talk to people they don't know. We can't just put more content in the channels we use today and the methods. It might require different backgrounds, different stories and agendas. And I loved Brian's comment about onboarding, right? And qualitative research. We get overwhelmed with data, especially in SaaS platforms, right? You use something like User Pilot to see how folks are using your tool, and then you think you know something, right? Well, but do you have the context and empathy? So I love talking to people, right? Conversion rate is one thing from a freemium product in B2C, but why do some people convert and others don't? You don't really get that with the data, right? It's a process of discovery, then validation. And so big data, platform data is both a validation tool and a flag that says maybe I should talk to people. And I think having those, open discussions, especially during launch, do you have the right triggers? Do you have the right stories? Do you have the right features to create confidence and credibility? Just because it's in the product and works doesn't mean anyone cares about it, right? We jump to these conclusions that cool widget drives value only if it gets consumed in a way that, again, I'm a capitalist, I guess, in many ways, and generate profit, right? So I think monitoring is important from a qualitative perspective and to follow the data indicators. And so I also love Matt's feedback about let's not cannibalize the other business, right? Let's make sure that we walk slowly into this. So some great feedback from Brian and Matt on how to go to stuff. But I just wanted to talk about there's a significant difference than adding users to current industries or segments than going to brand new segments. And we often underfund and de-risk going into new user communities because we think, well, the product works, but do they buy the same? So thanks for calling on me on that, Jason.
Yeah, you bet.
Hey, maybe Jason, if I can just add one more thing on
Jump on in.
The point about cannibalization, I think is a really important one as it comes to organizational alignment, right? Like we started with a fantasy product and we had a user who spent $1 with us. Can we expect that if we launch 4 new products that are roughly similar value propositions, that they're going to spend $4 with us? No, maybe we're going to get them to spend $1.50, $2. That's going to hurt the core product in some way, and so or the initial product, I should say. And so the most important thing that we're working on is getting the whole organizational line, not just the individual kind of vertical products, that we're all going after group-wide goals, group-wide OKRs, rather than saying, well, this new thing is happening and it's making my product go down. That might be the right move for the business, but you've got to make sure that your whole organization is aligned around it.
Yeah, that was really key to underscore. You want to manage cannibalization to an extent. At the same time, there's wisdom in disrupting yourself. So being intentional about it, and I love what Matt shared about the approach that they took. Our first goal was just to understand what was happening, what was the impact, and identify and then determine, is that good or bad? Because you're looking, we might be taking some business away from one line, but the net might be better. Or are we taking business away from one line in a way that's going to have a long-term destructive effect? It's not a simple trade-off, but it is a trade-off to be analyzed. I'm curious, before we switch topics, we talked a lot about this idea in a B2C context. How about a B2B context? Is there something fundamentally different when launching substantially different features and capabilities in a B2B context than you would see in a B2C context? Normally the stakes are higher, the dollars are bigger on an individual customer basis. But what else? What else? And I don't know if you've actually addressed this, but I'm going to lean over to Tiago just a minute because I know he's a very wise thinker. And in the space that you're in a very B2B driven type of business, and you've been in a lot of B2B type of businesses before. So even if you don't have a direct example to pull from, I know you've had to give some thought to this idea. What are some of the key activities you're going to lean into when launching a drastically different set of features in a B2B context that might be different from a B2C context?
Yeah, so I was thinking while everybody was talking, it was more B2C focused. Like on B2B, the way to get signals is a little bit different. Right, from my experience, it relied a lot on working alongside sales and customer success to get the major inputs from the existing customer base and also prospects. One of the things we've been recently implementing at RoadSync is to run surveys, right? So run quarterly surveys with our customer base, so we can throw some ideas of things that we have that could bring value, and also recruit people to for user testing. And sometimes we see a trend of someone calling customer success and saying, "Oh, I have a problem with the tool because of XYZ," and then you realize, okay, a lot of customers are showing a similar behavior. So you're always analyzing patterns, right? Behavior patterns. And one of the things we're doing is, okay, well, let's to John's point, like I also love to talk with customers, right? Like you get like the raw information. I tell customer success, whenever you get something from a customer, loop in the product team so we can get the right information as well. And that's how we start learning a little bit more, running experiments. So we get a couple of customers, we do a quick like discovery session, quick sketching with them, and then we try to build some functional software and test to see, okay, does this address your need? Yes, no, yeah, it does, but you need to make some enhancements, or no, something is missing here that is core to the way that we work. And our industry is a little bit standardized, so we you can kind of have like a something that is easier to extend the feature to the entire customer base. But the signals, like the way that we capture things is really changes a bit, because then you have this more direct communication with the customer to get their input, and then that's when you start formulating the experiments. So this is something that we've been testing now. Some of the experiments, the good things that they are failing fast, and we're saying, oh, okay, so we need to adjust some portion of it before we can release it to market, introduce something new. And just like as in any new release, right, you need to herd a lot of cats, right? So you're talking with marketing, with sales, with customer support, success. Everybody needs to be on the same page as how things are going to be released, because on the B2B space, customers are much more sensitive because of the big dollars, right? So you want to make sure you're not creating any disruption on their business. Not sure if that answers really like the question, but there are some thoughts and some things that we've been trying to implement to make sure we have a more controlled rollout of new features for B2B customers. So we provide value to them, and mitigate the risk.
And managing the ramp into those new experiences.
Yeah.
You know, when you were talking about that, it reminded me years ago when I was at Silverpop, we went through a pretty massive business transformation and an industry transformation. And in many ways, we were kind of on the forefront. This was a very B2B environment. We were selling email marketing software, an email marketing platform that was primarily for business to consumer marketers. So we were B2B to C. And we also purchased, there was some interesting things going on in an adjacent space, and it was in the B2B marketing space. And there was this notion of B2B marketing automation becoming something of interest. People were trying to automate their marketing processes in a more one-to-one sale, especially for high dollar, high ticket items or processes. And so you'd look at somebody like, say, for example, Xerox, who is selling to ADP, trying to sell a contract to deliver printers and copiers to thousands of offices, to thousands of people, versus one or two individual pieces of equipment. So we acquired a company called V-Trends out of Fargo, North Dakota, actually, and is my geography wrong? I'm going to edit that later if it is. But out of Fargo, and launched this B2B product that was specifically around marketing automation. It was very different. We started showing it off at our conference, And our B2C marketers, who were basically doing batch and blast email, started looking at this notion of automation and talking to smaller segments of customers and say, wow, that's actually really cool to be able to create a campaign with some logic in it that executes over time and talks to people in a connected conversation based on something that we know about them, based on how they're interacting. So we made the decision to make a shift and build that into rebuild our product around this automation concept. One of the biggest challenges that we faced in launching this new feature set in a product that was traditionally for B2C marketers was getting the analysts on board. They were struggling with understanding the nature of how our company was evolving. So are you serving B2B marketers or B2C marketers who have fundamentally different needs? Well, what we discovered was that they didn't have fundamentally different needs. They were just looking at the same problems in a different way. And the industry and best practices were going to evolve. But leaning into explaining those stories and the evolution that was happening with the analyst firms that were monitoring and writing about our industry became a big activity that we had to do as well. We were able to ultimately get some of them on board and use that to help drive adoption further as well by creating some new thought leadership about how the industry was changing. So that was another big learning that we had coming away from that. I see Andy's got his hand up. Andy, jump on here real quick.
Yeah, hey guys, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, no, on the comment on B2B, one, you remember, I think a lot of the discussion I heard was, a focus on the users of your product. B2B marketing also requires a buyer persona that is not the same as the user. So, you're in a quandary of sorts, like you're trying to prove to the user how the value your product can be, but at the same time, hopefully, versus sequentially, you're also having to send maybe a slightly different story to the buyer, and the bigger the customer, the more that separation lies where, and I'm in tech. So the IT, the CIO staff, the IT staff are looking at it one way and a purchasing department is looking at another, or some other C-suite's looking at streamlining, and so if you're talking about multiple products you're trying to introduce to a similar or same customer, you also got to be wary that that customer may only want one thing, and which one is it, which one's the best bang for the buck for them versus you and your company. So I think there's also that differentiation. The user's not the same as the buyer like it is in B2C, and as a product manager and marketer, there's some different tweaks to your story and your value proposition you've got to justify so that users may love it, but if their company won't buy it, then you're back to square one. So I think that's another element of just that marketing element of your product that you need to be focused on just as much as making sure the product works.
That's a great point. It's especially in the difference between users and buyers and making sure that you're serving the needs of both as you launch these new capabilities. Thanks for that, Andy. Appreciate it. Matt Mattina, you got your.
Hey, Jason.
Yep.
Sorry, this is Mark. If I could add one more thing.
Yep.
Yeah, sorry. If I could add one more thing to what Andy said. So, because I've been dealing with that lately, and what we find also, at least I work in the healthcare payer space, and what we find is that sometimes the buyer and the users have very different needs, mindsets, and opinions of what the company needs. So it's also, I think, very important to kind of triangulate what you're hearing from the buyer versus what the users are saying as well, because we've been in a few instances where we get pretty deep, have several calls with the buyer, which in this case would be like the head of the special investigations unit. They bring in their users or their team, who are the users, the investigators, and they tell us something completely different, and then we're back to square one in terms of the sales cycle.
That's a good point. That's kind of really building on that. Yep. And that can be really disruptive and foil your master plan. We got a lot of hands.
Yes, and it's really hard to. It's hard to do demos and presentations when you're planning for one thing and then it goes completely sideways during the presentation.
So, thank you, Mark. Appreciate that.
So Jason,
Matt, yeah.
I was going to add here that I work in B2B as well, and I would agree with what Thiago and Andy had said that I think one of the keys is to identify a trusted cohort of users as well as perhaps even some buyers to bring them along the way in the process as you're going. You certainly don't want to make or have there be any surprises or make some kind of big splash at some point with this new idea that you have or new product and find that it's a total flop. So being able to bring them along the way and sort of test their reaction to what you're doing and their thoughts and get their thoughts and input as well is key. I was listening to Twitter Spaces last night where once again the value of qualitative data being sort of underrated came up, and I think talking to as many people as you can about this newer product offering that you have within the core product, or perhaps even a brand new segment that you're entering into is really key, and getting just understanding their reactions to it. Sometimes I don't get me wrong, there's a ton of value in quantitative data, but just understanding what those users feelings are about what it is that you're doing and how it's going to impact their work on a day-to-day basis can be a major indicator of whether or not they're going to see this as a positive thing for them, or if it's a negative thing, or if it's somewhere in between. Then delving deeper, as Thiago mentioned, with some of those surveys and those interview questions to understand, okay, well, perhaps we got this right, but this could be improved. How can we improve this as we prepare for this launch? So qualitative data, I think, is really key in B2B setting. And I also think, as Mark said, in B2B, you sort of have this unique issue of the buyer versus the user, and understanding that those are two different things. In B2C, if somebody downloads your app, they're essentially the buyer and they are the user as well.
That reminds me, Matt, thank you, because those are some great call outs. And when you talked about that trusted cohort, that reminds me, IBM has their own flavor of design thinking. IBM design thinking. It was developed in collaboration with the Stanford D School and IDEO, who are some of the big innovators of the design thinking practices that we hear a lot about today. They have a program as part of IBM design thinking called the Sponsor User Program. And when you're actually creating something new at IBM, one of the things that you're charged to do is bring along some sponsor users from outside of IBM through the entire ideation and development process. And you have them actively taking part in that process as you go, in terms of defining the problems that you're trying to solve and validating that you're solving them and that what you're doing is usable, it's desirable, and as the business is building out the new capability, the new feature set, the new product, you've got actual users and customers riding alongside with you the whole time. And they also become testimonials when you go to market to help introduce your larger customer base to this new product and capability. They agree to jump in and have that conversation very publicly and share about their experiences with the product and how it's impacting them. So you get some testimonials very early on in the process to help unlock, uncover, and communicate those use cases. So that's a very specific program and implementation that's been formalized at IBM and is managed very well for you to think about as well. Jessica Williams.
Yeah, I think that's right. And one other thing, you have to be careful that you don't slant it too far in one direction with particular users.
Yeah, and you need a variety of users. It's not just one or two. You're going to have 2 or 3 for your early stage, and then as you get to beta, bring in more. But also try not to use the same users over and over for everything new that you do. You want a variety of perspectives and involvement from across your customer base as well.
Yeah. And to build on what Matt was saying about the qualitative data, I think that it's important as product managers to remember that the quantitative data does not provide context. And the context of why your users are using or not using a particular feature is critical in moving that feature and your product along. I'd like to go back additionally to the B2B notion of the buyer versus the user. And I've learned in the B2B world that typically the buyer cares only predominantly about the bottom line, right? Particularly higher up in the organizational org chart that the buyer sits. So, the user cares that it's saving them time, it's removing headaches, and that's great. But the buyer, really, I mean, it's capitalism full, at its heart, right?
Mm-hmm.
It is, is this saving my company money, or making me more money? And if it is making me more money, that is usually going to carry more weight. That's my 2 cents.
That's a great point. In a B2B environment, you're largely looking at return on investment is something that you need to be able to prove out for your B2B buyer. And in a B2C market, you're really thinking more about the experience, and the satisfaction is going to be a big indicator of customer happiness and why people are going to. And I don't think that's a universal truth, but I think it's a good way to think about two fundamental differences between B2B and B2C.
And Jason, I would add to what Jessica said. When you look at the math, right, it's economic value to the business or the team that you're working in, and it's hard cost, right? It's not we can allow you to work on more value add activities, right? A CFO doesn't buy that, right? A quarter of an FTE has zero value to an organization. And so it needs to be something that is material and demonstrable, and hopefully with references to prove that you can solve that pain and economic value. I think Jessica's spot on.
Great call out. Absolutely. Yep. Thank you, John. Thank you, Jessica. I want to shift gears here. We had a couple of questions come in on a different topic. So we're going to completely shift gears, and it's one that plagues product managers, I think, from day one of their career in product management until they retire. And it's really on the fundamental difference between product management and project management. As product managers, we have to wear a lot of different hats, and we have to have some project management skills in order to be successful in our role. Very often, especially in an agile software development environment, product managers and product owners often get turned to as a de facto project manager by their teams as well. And so I had the question come in a couple of different ways, and a couple of folks that asked that are on the call. If you want to jump in and expand on it and jump into this conversation, please do. But in the meantime, what I'd really like to get some perspective on from a few different people is, A, what is healthy versus unhealthy overlap between product and project management? And then how have you successfully managed that differentiation in the past and created the right space for yourself to do the customer advocacy and the voice of the customer and user perspective on the product management role in serving your organization in that way? Tiago, your hand went right up. Bring it on.
Yeah, so I think it all boils down to shared accountability with the team. Like, the product team is much more than just product management, and all the unhealthy situations where I was being a de facto project manager were in environments where the engineering team was not being held accountable for the outcomes they were set to deliver. So in like on product management, we are constantly being the ones being thrown under the bus constantly, right? Because we are held accountable for the success of a feature or a product. So I think that once you can develop a relationship with your engineering counterparts to make sure they understand that they are also accountable, responsible for the code they're writing, and also for the timelines they are giving, I think that helps make the conversation more productive, and it helps like manage the execution like better, right? So I if we have read like Inspired, Empowered, there's all this notion about an empowered product team, right? We really want to create like a more autonomous product team. We're having a discussion on Twitter the other day that you need to keep the team thriving if you win the lottery ticket, right? So, and how do you do this? You need to build this sense of shared accountability with them. Of course, you still need to manage the execution at some extent, but also you need to bring the team along. And I see that also from experience that a lot of teams, we still have a lot of the transition, the handoffs to the teams. Almost like I write the requirements, you spit out some code, and then we release it. If you bring everybody like to the early stages of the project, they develop that sense that, okay, I'm also responsible for what's coming out of that. So I want to make sure that I give my best, and then you get back to the healthy stage, which is more like managing the big blockers, right? And escalating when things go south, but you spend much less time project managing the feature of the product.
That's great feedback, Tiago. Thank you so much. Soumya, you've got your hand up. Why don't you jump in here? What are your thoughts?
Blessing and a curse. Right? I have worked on both sides of things. Blessing if the timing of the project manager and the product manager entering the project or a feature building at the same time, it's much easier, right? Mm-hmm. If product manager starts later than the project manager, there is always a rift. The reason why is project managers don't understand, right? Like how long does it take to build something that we already promised the client, right? They come with a deadline date. Mm-hmm. Product people, even though we work on timelines, it's kind of like given a box. Okay, you build something that fits the box, right? So that's where I have had like issues trying to explain the project manager. Yes, I understand you have given a date. Understand you have put a date there, and then we have to work towards it, but it is not possible because X reasons. So that time I have really had to go against the person and say, okay, no, we have to change. Like if you are going to stick to the date, this is what we can deliver, right? The back and forth negotiation was a little harder. But I do like having them. The only reason is so that I don't have to do that part of it too. There have been situations where there are no project managers, just product managers does everything, plan, execute, deliver. So I do like that part, having them at that part. It's just the timing of when both enters that project or when both are in the situation. Because when we start together, we both learn at the same pace, trying to discover how long it takes, why it is going to delay. Like we both learn at the same level, but the preconceived notion of already promised the date, come, let's try to build something, that's where I have a little bit of an issue.
Okay. John Guttrell.
Yeah, I agree.
Thank you, Soumya.
Yeah. I mean, Soumya is right. I mean, you got to bring them in as a true partner and get aligned early. And I'm a big fan. I'm not a lot of documentation, but I like a project charter. Right? Let's talk about what's the scope, what's the market and company expectations or customer commitments that we have, right? And then we can back away from that. I know that managing schedule is important for product folks, but I mean, you only have three things. You got people, time, and scope. and you can't fix all of those. And I would offer that people is, if you've ever been fooled by this, we'll hire more people to hit the date. Let's just understand that never happens. And if they do hire people, they don't actually add a lot of value. And if you try to fix all three, you're going to sacrifice all kinds of things. Quality is the easy one, right? But the other one is trust. It's morale and partnership with your engineers as they try to do some unspeakable thing in an unreasonable timeline. And I love project managers because they think differently than product managers. You know, I'm a product manager. I'm an optimist. I believe anything can be done. And if there's a wall in a project, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to run through that wall because we're a team and we're motivated. And then a project manager, they're realists, right? They manage risk in delivery. And if you've got true trust with your product team and they know what you're trying to accomplish for the business and the market, they'll raise their hand and they'll be like, you know what? I've seen people try to run through that wall. It didn't go well. And right. And so you got to, in some ways, trust the professionalism of a true project manager. And if you treat that person like a peer and someone that's real good counsel for you, you'll have a better team. You'll have a more predictable delivery model that everyone buys into and is aligned to. And so get those folks in early. And I remember the first time I had a project manager, I'm like, I got this. And then Byron kept me honest. He asked questions. Well, have you thought about this? Did you try that? And I'm like, wow. Seems like he was getting in my space, but really he was doing his job as a professional. And so if there's not a little bit of overlap and sort of crunchy toes from each other, walking on each other's feet, I don't think you got a great relationship with your project team. And so I've led a PMO office. I got one by accident after an acquisition, and wow. Yeah. It was fun. I mean, I learned so much, and Byron was great. So yes, right. Get him in early.
Yep. So I hear kind of two themes here emerging as we're talking about this. There is the scenario where you have a formal project management function and a project manager to support you. And then there are also organizations where, for whatever reason, maybe it's lack of investment, maybe it's just organizational maturity, there isn't a formal project manager as part of your initiative, or at least that can address at the team level. So in the scenario where you have the formal project management function, it's really about partnering to make sure that you're exchanging the right practices and holding each other accountable to the right things. And what I heard, especially from Tiago a lot, is in the environment where you don't have a project manager helping the team to manage their flow, it's about setting up an agreement about shared responsibilities and targeted outcomes, and having really good open communication and a conceptual charter, at least, towards what success looks like, so that the product manager so that you as the product manager don't get bogged down in tracking activity, but you're really focused on helping to make sure that we're validating that we're getting to the goal that we're after. Does that kind of sum up what everybody's hearing, or do you hear something different, or have an additional perspective you want to bring to the table?
I think it's summed up pretty well, Jason, and I completely agree with John, Soumya, and also Jessica. Like, if you have a partner on the PMO side to help you, like to be the more reasonable, factual person to manage the risks and issues of the project, that's definitely like the way to go, right? I work in organizations where we didn't have a project manager per se, but we had program managers that would see subsets of the product, and they would be the ones that will be always, tracking the statuses, making sure that everybody was following the pace, right? To deliver the project and then managing the risk. That's the ideal situation for sure. But to your point, especially on the startup world, when you're building the organization maturity and you still don't have all the pieces together, right? You will need to play around with the sense of shared accountability with the team, so that you as a product manager don't get overwhelmed with all the project management duties.
Very good. Thank you, Tiago. Anybody else have anything to add?
Yeah, Tiago, I just wanted to delve a little into what Tiago had said and ask, what are some effective ways in which you've been able to obtain that accountability from the development and QA teams when there has been lapses in accountability?
Yeah, that's a great question, because it's definitely much more trial and error, right? And really trying to build a nice, a good relationship with the engineering leads and engineering management, and bring them to the conversation as early as possible in the project, right? I worked in environments where if everybody on product does the discovery and then put the PRDs and the requirements together, and that's when the engineering team comes in. What I've been trying to do to expand on this with the teams I worked with was to, whenever there's any discovery exercise, or whenever there was a new opportunity, I would always bring the engineering manager or the engineering lead from the team and say, okay, so let's sit together, let's discuss about this, let's talk with the customer. So like really trying to use that triad. And when we got a UX lead, it was the same thing. Let's try to talk with the customer together, let's assess the opportunity together, so that they understand, oh, okay, now I understand from a business perspective how my technical outcome is going to affect this, right? My technical product is going to affect this. And also from a business perspective, understand what are the limitations on the engineering side that I need to take into account, right, for my feature. But it's not a science, right? It's more like conversational, and it's really trying to bring engineering as early as possible to the process. It's basically what John and Sonia said. Well, if you have some partner in the very beginning of the initiative, then you are set up for success, right? So that's how I've been trying to manage that with the teams whenever there is no PMO person, right, to keep tabs on everybody.
And one tip also I would give is, this has worked wonders. Even though I, as product manager, have to have meetings set up with some team, I don't do it when there is a project manager present. I make them make those meetings. I make them attend those meetings so that they will know how many no's, I don't knows we have to hear and wait for those information and answers. So kind of like giving them the responsibility and sharing that responsibility, like always help, because they understand we don't have the information to move forward, like that has happened a lot, and actually they take ownership of getting that information for us. So I have tried to kind of like enable them to run the project, even though I'm building the product. So I don't take like, okay, oh, this is my product, I have to know. Just share it with them. Share the pain more than the happiness. First, share the pain. Make them feel the pain, and then include them when you are celebrating. So
Sonia, we took a similar approach where we put a neutral party in as the person that runs these daily Scrum meetings with the development teams. So the project manager sits in on those and can sort of act as a neutral party instead of having the product managers there who are eager to see, progress, and there's like friction from time to time, and it just takes that out of the picture and allows us to still get a status on how things are going, and we can jump in and listen in and contribute if we want to, but I think it helps to have that sort of neutral third party there that still wants to see accountability from the team and is going to drive that from a project management standpoint, but doesn't necessarily have a totally direct stake in the product.
Yep.
I think it's cool hearing what you guys have. Yeah, that's awesome. Which I find that I end up project managing the project manager in my situation. So I think if you have someone strong that can run it and do it, it works. It's just I personally haven't had that experience to be able to have someone that can really step in. So I find that I end up leading and then just say, hey, go schedule meetings, go do this.
I found that if you have a really strong dev manager, that dev manager can also be in some ways, the role of the project manager, in that they are the voice of reason and I am the voice of optimism.
You know, we had an engineering leader who's no longer here who believed that very strongly, that all engineering managers are project managers, period. And there's some of them want to do it and some of them don't. I mean, I hear pushback that it precludes them from being the technical leader and the people manager that they want to be, but others embrace it, right? I mean, I like the idea of like make it someone who's not sitting in a product org or in a tech org, so that they can, you know, really be objective about reporting the risks and laying out the plan.
Yep. So that is a great landing for the conversation. That's a really good point too, Brian. And so part of the answer is it's really everyone in leadership's responsibility to ensure that things are on track. I love the model as well that Jessica mentioned, and that Matt was mentioning, where you've got that person who is outside of the day-to-day development and product management activity on the team, serving as essentially as the Scrum Master. And I've seen that model work really well a lot of times, where the Scrum Master in Agile's function is to facilitate these conversations and clear blockers, and sometimes and serve as a coach on good Agile process. And I love seeing that, and I've seen it work really well, especially as companies that are trying to scale into an Agile practice. But this has been a fantastic discussion. I want to once again welcome John, Ariana, Garrison, Ryan, and JoJo joining us for the first time today. John, so glad you could join us. Looking forward to seeing you in person. Thanks everyone for your input and for your questions. This has been a great conversation. Thank you so much, and have a fantastic day.